Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of The Archive. My name is St. Godric. So excited for you to be here today. Our goal on this podcast, like always, is to tell interesting LARP stories and preserve LARP history. I'm very excited to introduce to you today someone who is new to me, who I haven't met before, but I am very excited to have on the show this evening. This is Eadoain. Did I get it?
Yep.
Boom. Just took like six practice tries and we got it. So, Eadoain, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Not too bad at all. I appreciate you coming on and spending some time with me this evening as we kind of go through all of this. And so if I recall correctly, SCA player first, recently got into Amtgard, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. So how long have you been playing each of those games?
I've been doing SCA on and off for about 18 years now. And I just got into Amtgard maybe a year or two before the plague.
Okay. Yeah, this past year doesn't really count. We don't really we don't really keep that. By chance did you have in either game the opportunity to partake in any of like the online ANS stuff or the online classes or anything like that?
I actually did a lot of stuff online during the plague. That's how I learned brocaded tablet weaving and tapestry weaving and a few other kinds of weaving.
That's awesome. I've watched so many classes this past year. I know the SCA Kingdom of the Middle is where I play, and they have the Royal University of the Mid-Realm that puts out classes all the time, and I've eaten that stuff up. I just absolutely love it. It's been so much fun to sit and learn all this new stuff, and it's cool that people are putting their classes online. I've been really enjoying that. So we will jump right in here with kind of the softball easy question for you. So what got you into these type of games? With SCA originally, Amtgard now, what is the draw for you? Why are these things so fun?
So the original draw for me into the SCA was the fighting, because that's the big shiny thing that everybody notices. And I couldn't actually start when I first found the SCA because I was in a small town and the closest group was about half an hour, 45 minutes away. And I couldn't very well ask my parents to take me up there after they'd been working all day. So I waited until I went to college in Ames, Iowa. And as soon as I could find the SCA group there, I started fighting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I love about these games is that no matter where you go, there seems to be always something close, whether it's, you said an hour away or not, but I've moved all over this country and everywhere I go, there's Amtgard, Dagbell, SCA. It's pretty much everywhere.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's really nice. I wish there had been something closer growing up because I think it would have made my childhood a bit easier, but yeah, it definitely made my college years better.
That's awesome. And what kingdom was that in?
Callantyr.
Callantyr. Cool.
Yeah, the Kingdom of Callantyr.
So the fighting aspect of it was kind of what drew you in initially, you said?
Yeah.
Awesome. So, go ahead.
What kept me in it was the arts and sciences.
It's funny. It's the same exact thing for me. The fighting is what got me into all of these games, and what has kept me has been the arts and sciences, and the idea of having something to do during the week to keep my hands busy has always been something I've enjoyed.
Oh, yeah.
So what in the early days of your SCA career, tell me a little bit about how that got started. I know for me, when I went out to my first SCA day, I was really bright-eyed because it's like, oh man, these guys they're actually smacking each other. Oh man, that looks. And then I kind of watched for a little bit. I got real interested. I'm like, okay, I'll give this a shot. And then put the armor on. You're like, oh man, this is heavier than I thought it would be. Okay, here we go. And then line up. So what were your first few days out there like?
So the only loner gear they had that fit me for the chest armor was what they called the uniboob armor, because it came over in a big dome. And that was all that fit me because as you can see, I'm well endowed. And I've always been like that, unfortunately. It makes things a little hard sometimes. And so the way the armor fit me, it was a perfect shot to slide down my side and hit my hips. And so that was a very common shot that they would throw at me, partially because they thought it was funny, and partially to teach me to protect it because it was such a perfect shot. And yeah, I had quite a few hip bruises for the first few days.
Absolutely. That's one of the ways that I learned where I was open is if people keep hitting me in the same spot, it's like, oh man, I gotta figure this out. Like,
I gotta protect that.
For sure. I know for me, I had been playing the foam fighting games for about 10 years before I played SCA at all. And so it's kind of difficult for me to get used to swinging at people's faces because in Amtgard and in Dagger, that's a no-no. You don't do that at all. And so I don't mind getting hit in the face or in the head too much in SCA because the helmets are awesome. Like they're bad, but it took me a long time to be able to convince myself to swing at someone's head and break that instinct that I had. Have you noticed switching to Amtgard? Has it been the opposite for you where it's like, oh, I can't throw at their head now?
I actually haven't done a lot of fighting in Amtgard, partially because I found that I have a heart condition. And so too much strenuous activity and bad things happen.
For sure. Well, and that's one of the cool things about SCA and Amtgard too that I have really enjoyed is that there are avenues for every person. So if fighting is your thing, there's room for that. If ANS is your thing, there's room for that. And that's one of the coolest parts about the game for me is that if you get bored in our game, it's because you're a boring person. Like there is so much to do in our game. So you said ANS is what kept you in. What type of ANS are you into? What's your poison?
I have a few. Mostly the fiber arts. I do sewing. I do weaving. I do embroidery, and I just am now reteaching myself bobbin lace.
That's awesome. Which one was the first one that you got into? Sewing?
Definitely sewing. Because none of the loner garb fit me unless I altered it somehow.
I don't know how much you know about me or how many videos that you've watched, but my masterhood at Amtgard is for weaving belts out of paracord and macrame. And so when I started to get into the SCA, I tried to do some of the inkle weaving stuff, and it was all right. I enjoyed it for a while, but it's not quite the same. There's something about the macrame and paracord because it's all hand done. It's more hand weaving than it is on a loom. But it was pretty fun. I've done a few of the tablet woven stuff too, and that's a pretty fun little thing to try and figure out and learn.
Oh yeah, I've got like 5 looms.
There you go. Oh, that's awesome.
That's the mist hole dragon's head pattern.
That's really cool. I found myself enjoying the weaving but hating the setup. It took way too much time to set everything up on the loom to actually I enjoyed the weaving part of it, but nothing else.
Yeah. That's why I love, I do what's called speed warping. And that weaving took me maybe 15, 20 minutes to set up.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, I took a class on it and it took me forever to just set everything up. And it was just like, oh man, we spent the first hour of this class just getting everybody's looms set up, let alone even actually learning to weave anything. Yeah, it can be tedious unless you know how to speed warp. Yeah, I know. I was actually looking just the other day, looking at some of the table looms and some of the the wider stuff, not just the card, like the belt width ones, but trying to do blankets and stuff like that. And that stuff looks pretty cool too. Oh yeah, I don't have room for that. Otherwise, I would have that. yeah, they can get pretty massive. Yeah. So have you found that the skill sets that you learned in the SCA have transferred over to Amtgard pretty easily for you? The sewing definitely has. The weaving, it seems like not a lot of people in Amtgard do weaving or understand it very well. So that one I'm having a little, people tend to be a little more impressed with it, I guess. But I'm trying to spread more knowledge about weaving through Amtgard because I think it's a great way to decorate your clothes. For sure. And I think part of the reason for that might be in the SCA where they don't have as many machine embroidered things as we do. The trim is one of the few ways that you can really set your stuff apart. Where in Amtgard, if everything's appliqued, it's like the trim doesn't matter as much. And so most people haven't seen the really cool, intricate handmade trims like they have perhaps in the SCA.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've definitely noticed more awe with the weaving in Amtgard than in the SCA. It seems like you can't throw a stone without hitting someone that weaves in the SCA.
Yeah, every event I've been to, I've seen someone weaving at SCA. They're sitting on the side doing their stuff,
Yep. I'm guilty of that too.
Hey, I like it. I think the crafts that you can do at home and do at events while you're just hanging out with friends are some of the best crafts. They're enjoyable. They're easy to teach other people. I do a lot of like I said, the woven macrame belts. And one of the reasons I like it so much is for $10, I can teach a kid how to make a belt, and that belt's going to last them for years and years and years. And I can show them right there on the spot. And with 15 or 20 minutes of instruction, they can weave the whole thing out. And I know with the looms, it's a little different because you got to spend some money getting your loom, but the technique itself isn't terribly difficult to understand until you get into some of the real complex patterns.
Yeah, there are some pretty complex patterns, and you don't actually need a loom to do tablet weaving. You can do what's called backstrapping, where you tie one end to something solid like a banister, and then the other end can go around your belt or a chair, and then the belt or chair becomes the tensioner.
I think I've seen that. I saw somebody tie it to a door frame before, and then they're like leaning back doing it. And so that must be what that is. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So you don't have to have a loom.
Yeah, that makes it a lot easier then, because those can sometimes be difficult to get a good one.
Yeah, I've got some good sources, thankfully.
There you go. So give me a little bit more insight on the transition from SCA to Amtgard. So most of the people that I have interviewed and that I have talked with were Amtgarders or Dagorhir Belegarth players first, and then kind of retired into the SCA. I don't think I've met anybody. You're the first who started in the SCA and then came to Amtgard. So what was some of the reasoning behind that? What was the transition like?
So I actually didn't know Amtgard existed until one of my friends who also does both of them was like, hey, I've got some stuff to get rid of. Do you want it? I was like, sure. Let's meet up at Elmwood Park on Saturday, and you can see what Amtgard is about. And I was like, Amtgard? Okay. And I wore my German Renaissance outfit there, because she said, dress up in garb. And it's like, well, that's the only nice garb I've got, so let's wear it. And I showed up and saw them whacking foam and was like, oh, this looks like fun. So I hung out for a bit and chatted with some of the people who were also on the sidelines, and I just kind of hung around.
That's awesome. I know that a lot of the Amtgarders end up wanting to do the SCA combat and will go and pursue it that way. And then I've seen a few like Lyndon, whose just episode aired last week. She really enjoyed the arts and science part of the SCA too. So have you competed in SCA and Amtgard tournaments at this point?
Yes. I haven't done as many SCA recently, because I'm pretty busy with my business, and so I don't have time to do personal projects for competition. But for Amtgard, they're not as picky about being historically accurate.
Yeah. So
I can whip something out on my sewing machine in like 5 hours and enter that.
For sure. So what are some of the ways that the tournaments are similar? And then what are some of the ways, or not even necessarily tournaments, what we'll call it ANS culture in general? What are some of the ways that the two games are similar? And then what are some ways that there might not be as similar?
There's a lot of value for craftsmanship and skill in both of them, and I appreciate that. They don't care as much about documentation in Amtgard as they do in SCA. SCA is pretty big. Can you document it to period if you're going to be entering it into arts and sciences? If it's not for arts and sciences, as long as it looks period, you're fine. Yeah. So that's nice too. but I feel like there's a lot more acceptance of modern techniques in Amtgard than there is in the SCA.
For sure.
They're starting to get better about it, but for the most part, especially for arts and science competitions, the SCA prefers the period way. And that's the biggest difference.
There's almost no requirement in Amtgard for something to be period. It can be either period or fantasy. And so there's almost there you go.
Yeah, I can't show this at SCA events.
Yeah.
But I can definitely show it here.
Mm-hmm. I love it. That's awesome. And I know there are we have a lot of people in Amtgard who have high level ANS awards for digitized things or computerized things, and that just doesn't seem to quite have a place in the SCA. And I understand why, right? If it's trying to recreate, it is a historical recreation game. And so modern, CNC printed or cut, yada, yada, doesn't always have a place where in Amtgard it can. But then you get what we were talking about earlier, where in Amtgard you look at the historical stuff, and sometimes that can be out of place. You were talking about with the weaving, the trims and stuff. I've been playing around with silk more and more. I love silk, but there's almost no silk in Amtgard, and I've seen silk at almost every SCA event I've been to. And it's the historical stuff doesn't necessarily always matter as much, in my opinion.
Yeah. I love silk.
I have been really enjoying it. I am not that great of a seamstress, whatever the correct term there is. And I am learning, but I really, really enjoy the silk. I love the way it wears in the summertime, and it just feels good. And it wasn't as difficult as what everyone had told me it was going to be. I just got a smaller needle and a different foot for my sewing machine, and it was fine. Yeah. So my skill isn't great, but for where I'm at, I'm really enjoying. And I don't know if you can see how they come with all of the different trims, and you can get these are saris from India. They're used, and you get them for $35 and you get these beautiful patterns on them. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I've been meaning to get in on that, and I never have money when she has the sales.
I get a lot of mine on Etsy as well. And then I go Miriam's Yard and Fabric. I look at her stuff. Her stuff is kind of hit or miss on the colors that I want. But on Etsy, they have them roughly for the same price. It takes 3 times as long to ship here. So
yeah. 6 in one, half dozen in the other.
Yeah, this one was from Miriam's, and I'm going to get 2 tunics out of this one, and it was $35. Nice. So I'll take that all day long.
Oh yeah, definitely, especially for real silk.
And it's cheaper than linen. I like the colors that are very vibrant, and then sometimes you can get the cool patterns on them that you're not going to get. I'm not sewing that. I'm not making that at any time soon. So being able to get that stuff has been pretty fun.
Oh yeah.
But back to my point with the silk is there's almost no silk in Amtgard. I've never seen anyone else have anything silk other than me. But in the SCA there is. And it's all over the place. Yeah, it's all over the place. And I think that's cool that the games are similar enough to where your skill set transfers, but different enough to be able to pick some stuff out. It's okay, I know what game I'm at by looking at that garb type of stuff.
Yeah.
So I got to ask a question that a lot of our Amtgard viewers will be thinking. Every time I have an SCA guest on, I get these questions. Most Amtgarders tend to have a negative opinion on the SCA. Maybe they'll show up and the SCAers look down on them. They don't like their garb. They think it's a fight with real swords, even though SCA is still hitting each other with wooden sticks and not real swords. But so as someone who has played both and is involved in both communities, what advice would you have for somebody who is in Amtgard who is thinking about going into the SCA, but they're hesitant to, or they're kind of worried about it? What's some pieces of advice that would make that transition easier?
Try not to listen to the garb police.
Yep.
because most of the people in the SCA, if you're not entering it into an ANS competition, like I said earlier, they don't care as long as it's an attempt at pre-1600s. So, I mean, that's the biggest thing because I've heard people get talked down to about their garb, and it's like that's my biggest pet peeve. Don't talk down to someone about their garb. They're trying. Not everyone can afford the super nice stuff that you're wearing.
Absolutely. And I think what's the rule? Looks good at 10 feet away.
Yep.
And so it's like 10 feet away. This looks medieval.
10 feet away dancing on an elephant.
Yep. So what advice now? You said you've been in for a couple of years now at Amtgard. What's kind of the other way? Do you have any advice for SCAers that are maybe making the jump to Amtgard? What advice would you give them?
Learn not to follow the rules of historical clothing so much, because you can get really creative with your garb in Amtgard, and you don't have those set rules of this is what they wore in period, so this is what it must look like. You can get the crazy paisley that is all mucked up and doesn't look like it's in nice, neat rows, and you can make something beautiful with that. You can get, I wouldn't recommend polyester for camping events, especially if you're going to be around open flames, but you can get the polyester and the other stuff and make pretty looking clothing with it. So yeah, I'm a garber, so most of my stuff is related to clothing.
Now that's all right completely. I think most of the SCA, any garb you have in the SCA, it's going to be welcome in Amtgard right away. But if you're making new stuff, man, the world is open in Amtgard. She's all right. The world is wide open for you in Amtgard garb wise. You want to make a treant costume? Go make a treant costume. You've always wanted to be a minotaur? Go make a minotaur. Like, that's pretty cool. And that's probably not something that you necessarily get in the SCA all that often.
Curly, stop it. Curly, stop it. I'm ignoring him and he's unhappy with it.
Oh, no. So I was looking at your orc a little bit before we started. And if I recall, you're sitting at 7 garbers now, correct?
I thought it was 6.
6? I could be wrong. I thought it was 7. So have those just been from things that you made in the SCA that they saw, or have you actively been entering in competitions and whatnot in your kingdom?
I've been actively entering competitions in Rivermore.
Awesome. That was going to be my next question, is what kingdom are you a part of? Rivermore. I've met a couple of people from Rivermore who have come to keep on the Borderlands, and I've hung out with them. They seem to be a fun-loving kingdom out there.
Oh yeah, we are.
That's
unfortunately
awesome.
Keith is too far for me.
Yeah, it's right outside of Indianapolis this year, so it's a trek. So the garb that you're making, I've got some stuff here in a little bit. We can go ahead and pull up. Let me flip this down.
Curly,
go here. So I've got your Raven Wing clothing pulled up here. I'm going to go and just take a look at some of the stuff that you've made. Now, is most of the stuff that you make on this website, is this going to be SCA or Amtgard or both most of the time?
It can be both. It can be both. Yeah, I mean, these are things that I've either made for myself or commissions that I've gotten.
That's awesome. And I've got, I don't know, as a merchant, I have vended a few times as well. And there are certain things that I make that I love making. And there are certain things that when someone orders it, I just go like, oh man. So do you have a favorite thing to make and a least favorite thing to make?
I think my favorite thing to make are the corsets and the pairs of bodies.
Okay.
My least favorite is most definitely those face masks. If I never have to make another one again, it'll be too soon.
Let's see, these ones right here?
Not those. Those are awesome. The ones next to them. Yep, those. The awesome ones.
Hey, there's some Amtgard fabric for you right there.
Yep.
Yeah. Did you just make a whole bunch of them and get sick of them?
Yeah, I think I got an order for like 400 masks at one point.
Oh my goodness.
Throughout the course of the plague, not all at once, thankfully.
Goodness. So now I'm over on your Raven's Wing clothing Facebook page. And if you guys are interested in looking at any of this, you can go here, or you have an Etsy store as well. I saw that too.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to kind of scroll through here and pull up some of the stuff. This is, which type of weaving is this?
That is a very simple card weaving pattern.
That's awesome. It's so funny. So whenever I see these things, I look for what I can do for belts, because most of what I do is taking the simplest of card weaving, but my belts are only 18 to 24 strands. And so trying to figure out how to do them here, heck, I'll pull it up here in a minute and give you an example. But trying to take these patterns that I see and say, can I do that without a loom and with paracord? And some of them I can, but some of them I can't.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Man. And for those who aren't familiar with this type of weaving, can you give me like a 30-second breakdown of what we're seing here?
So this is a Celtic knot weaving. It's kind of like double face weaving, but there's each card only has one of the pattern thread through it instead of two.
Okay.
So that's the main difference between this and double face.
That's so cool. This is an example for listeners who are maybe didn't see or didn't know what we were talking about earlier with the trim. This is kind of the stuff that we're talking about.
Yeah. And that's a silk cashmere blend. Oh my God. I did not want to go back to cotton after that.
Now this is what you were just showing, correct?
Yep. This is what I've got next to me.
That's awesome. I didn't see the feathers. That's pretty cool.
Yep. Hand sewn on. And then hand closed.
That's cool. Now, what part of it, other than the feathers, would not make this applicable to SCA?
The pattern itself is not period. Okay. It's more 1940s.
Gotcha. Okay. So just entirely not exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah.
We're about 200 years too early. Yeah. Oh man. I have made quite a few hoods. I tried to do a couple of lined ones this over pandemic. Man, they're a pain. I do not enjoy doing the lined hoods.
They are a pain, but they look good and they're warm.
I get this seam just fine. It's when I get down to here, I'm always either like too short or too long by an inch. And then when I try and I'm just going to serge them together and call it done and then undersew it. And then it's like, it just bunches or it doesn't look good. I'm just I'm too impatient to be a good garber. That's I'm like, nah, I've had enough. Yeah, here we go. Here's another one. Yeah. So this is where I get where it's where there's part of it. One of them is longer than the other. That's always where I get stuck.
Well, that's why you just fold up the extra.
Okay.
And just fold it in.
Like fold it underneath, you mean?
So the way I finish it off, I usually finish it off by hand.
Okay.
So I fold the two layers to the inside. So they're like this.
Mm-hmm. I see.
And then if one's, longer than the other, just fold it in more.
See, I've done it two ways so far. I've done it where I just serge it and then fold it under and sew it. And then I've also done something similar, like the bag method, I think is what it's called, where you do that. I just have a hard time knowing how much to fold under, I guess.
Right. Yeah, it can be difficult.
Oh, this is neat. Now, is this with this pass for SCA? Is this good or no?
Yes, that would pass for SCA. It's inspired by Renaissance Italy.
Okay. So I always wonder with the patterns on what I know that the block printed stuff is good, and I know that some cultures had the patterns, but then I'm always like, at what point is this not SCA or is it SCA? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I love that fabric. Unfortunately, I don't have any more.
Isn't that the worst when you find a fabric that you like and then you run out of it before you get to finish or you want to make something else with it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was really sad when Hancock closed.
I'm going to pull up real quick so I can just give you quit sending me stuff. That's my local fight group who keeps popping up on. So this is some of the stuff that I do. So
Okay.
like that's macrame. Mm-hmm. And then I also enjoy paracord quite a bit too. And
Nice.
so you can see it's taking the simplest of the patterns and trying to make it. And then what really what separates people who are good at this from not are the end knots. Like getting into the really fancy stuff at the end is, like pretty fun for me. I enjoy it. And so I was able to, here we go. So this is what I made for my wife with the silk and then her belt. So
very nice.
Those have been my pandemic projects. Have you had anything in particular that you've been working on through the pandemic that maybe you didn't have skill set wise beforehand?
I took a single class on bobbin lace like 5-10 years ago, and then I never did anything with it again. And so I'm relearning.
Oh, that's cool.
Bobbin lace.
I've seen videos of that and that's where each one of those, you pick it up and move it and then it makes the patterns, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I've got a finished one. Well, kind of finished.
Oh, cool. And now is that trim or what are you using that for?
It's not long enough to be trim because it was a practice one. This was my first one in like 10 years. So it's a bookmark, essentially.
That's cool, though. I love being able to make little things like that, little trinkets. I have used skills that I have learned through Amtgard and my Larp skill set for Christmas gifts all the time. I've done like glass etching. I learned. Have you seen the paint pour, where you just pour a bunch of different paint colors into a cup and you layer them, and then you take the cup and you put a canvas over it, and then you flip it up and lift the cup up, and the paint goes everywhere.
I have not seen that.
Let me see. I probably have pictures of those. But anyway, those are a lot of things that I have been able to make for family members for gifts and for Christmas and stuff. Here we go.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I don't know how, probably not period at all, but you just throw a bunch of different layers of paint in there. And then when you lift the cup up, it goes everywhere and you just tilt it around until you get where you want it. And it's pretty fun. These are all these were my siblings' Christmas gifts a couple years back.
Very nice.
Yeah, a skill set that I would not have had if it were not for LARP and the LARP universe.
Yeah. Unfortunately, my family doesn't appreciate some of my skills as much for homemade gifts. So gift cards it is.
There you go. I don't think mine would like if I just gave them a tunic, right? But some of the other stuff I like that. They're like, okay, I make for like, I do glass etching stuff for whenever my siblings get married. I get a mirror and I'll glass etch their last name and then founded in whatever year. And it's like,
nice.
Stuff like that. And that I would have never glass etched if it weren't for LARPing.
Yeah.
So, stuff
I
like that.
probably never would have sewn if it wasn't for LARPing. So.
Yep.
Look at me now.
And now you're making money on it.
Yep.
So, question for you, transitioning a little bit. You found me through Lyndon because you are a part of her extended belt line. Are you in a belted line or what? Okay, I always get this confused. It's not squires for laurels. What do laurels take? Are they apprentices?
Apprentices, yes.
So are you in a belted family over there in the SCA as well?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Not yet.
So have you noticed, just looking from the outside, like cursory then, some of the differences as a quote underbelt in Amtgard compared to the SCA? How do they compare?
The names are different.
Yeah, for sure. I always forget them. I know squires are for knights. Apprentices are for laurels. And then are they also for pelicans?
No, it's proteges.
Protege. Yeah, see, they have different names for all of them. I always get them mixed up. Amtgard makes it easy and just says squires.
Yeah, but in all honesty, from what I can tell, that's pretty much the only difference.
That's pretty cool to know.
So
I have noticed from and this is purely like regional maybe, or just my experience anecdotally, I have found that the peerage in SCA is more about teaching and more about character than it is in Amtgard. But there are more, as in like our sword knights in Amtgard are our top 0.5%. Right, where in SCA, knights are the top 5% or 10%, depending on your kingdom. So there are definitely more of them, but there is a bigger emphasis placed on the character of the person than there tends to be in Amtgard. But I don't know if that's everywhere or if that's just in my area. But
they definitely put emphasis on character in Callandir. So that's a big part of the discussion when they're considering someone for one of the orders.
I think it should be. I think it should be the biggest thing. And again, I don't know if it's the same way in SCA, but in Amtgard, when you put on that white knight's belt, you are saying, "Hey, come ask me questions. Hey, if you need help, I'm the person to ask." And so we need those people to be willing to do that. And if you're not willing to do that, or you're not good at that, I don't think you should take the belt. I don't think you should walk into that office if you're not willing to help out.
Yeah, I completely agree, because you're basically becoming the face of your game, and you better be able to put forward a good face.
Yep, 100%. If a reporter shows up and is going to do a local news thing, who are they going to go to? They're going to go to your knights. Just that's, and who, if a new player shows up, are they going to direct the new player to? Your knight. And some of in our kingdom, well, the Kingdom of the Rising Winds, the Circle of Knights, we get to vote on, upcoming people like most games do. But one of my criteria for who I vote for is, if I could have 10 of this person, would our game be better? Like, if I could clone them, do I want more of them? And then B is, if I take a new player and I drop a new player with them, is that player likely to have a good enough time to where they want to come back? And if either of those fail, I don't want them as a knight.
Yeah, that's a pretty good criteria, I think.
Yeah. So who is your knight?
My knight is Eadoain.
Okay. I would have butchered that name as well.
We usually call her Uni.
Uni, that's significantly easier. I like that one. So then how are you related to Lyndon? Is it like a fourth Grand Squire or something like that?
I'm not sure exactly on the tree. I need to look into that more, because I know that Uni is further down the belt line. I don't think she was directly under Lyndon, but I'd have to double check.
That's cool. So how would you describe your belted relationship with your knight? Is it more of because some knights I have found are all about passing on the skill that they have. Other knights are more emphasis on trying to I want really good friends in my belt line. Other knights are, I don't really care about either of those. I want to help the people who I think need the most help. Like, how would you describe your relationship with your knight?
It's still pretty new, and so I think we're still figuring it out.
Well, congratulations then, if it's still pretty new.
Yeah.
So yeah, still figuring it out. I know my knight was more of a springboard for me. He's a flame knight and I'm a serpent knight. So he had nothing to do with really my like skill in my craft, but he was one, he taught me more like, hey, Godric, you need to keep your mouth shut here. And that was very helpful to me, Yeah. Is your knight a serpent knight?
Yes. for garb, I believe.
Cool. Awesome. That's helpful.
Yeah, it is.
Because I have friends, one of my squires right now is pushing for sword, and he is already better than me. And so it's like, well, crap, what do I do now? Like, I need to help this guy, but I don't particularly have the skill set to do it. So, but if I were doing something in the ANS world, like I am with my other squire, he's pushing for owls. I'm like, okay, I'm more in my realm. I can guide a little bit better here. Now, how do underbelts from you work in your belt line? As in persons at arms, pages. Does your knight have any particular rules on those, or are you allowed to just kind of do what you want with those?
I have not asked her that, actually, because it never occurred to me.
There you go. So I know some knights don't want their squires taking person at arms or pages, and some really do. I want my squires to take their own people at arms or pages, because I think part of the skill set that they need to learn is teaching. And so not only are they, quote, supposed to be learning from me, whatever that means, but they're supposed to be teaching that to the next person. And so my goal is I want, when my squires graduate and become knights, that their underbelts go with them. I don't want them to stick underneath me. I want them to go and have their own. So that's just kind of how we do it.
Okay. That's a good way to do it. I'll have to talk to her about it and see what she says.
Yeah, and I've found about 50% of the knights don't even care what you do. They're like, oh, sure, if you want one, take one. Cool. So that very well might be the response you get back anyway.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yep. So you said fairly new. How new are we talking?
I approached her about it during the pandemic, and it didn't really make it official until the first park day back, which was about a month ago.
Oh, cool. Man, so super new.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's cool that you felt comfortable to approach her about it, because I know that there seems to be this stigma with some people in Amtgard of, well, I don't want to approach them. What if they say no? Or on the other hand, I know people who have approached 13 or 14 knights and keep getting declined, and they'll ask everybody. So what was kind of your mindset of feeling comfortable enough to approach her? How did that whole thing work?
She's a wonderful person. I've learned a few things from her before I approached her, like how to make hoods and how to do applique. And I just felt, what's the worst she can do? Say no. So I just kind of went with it.
Well, that's good to hear. I love the belted families in our game. They're one of my favorite parts, but I also love teaching, and I think that's a direct tie to it. And I know some people can't stand our belt lines, where they think it's the dumbest thing in the world and they don't ever want to be a part of one. Is that mindset similar to what goes on in the SCA? Like, can you get elevated in the SCA without having an overbelt?
I believe you can. I think it also depends on which kingdom you're in.
Okay.
Because Kalantir is not big on households, but other kingdoms are. So it varies from kingdom to kingdom.
That's interesting too. I like regional differences like that. They're fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Because I know some kingdoms in Amtgard will have a limit on the number of squires a knight can take, and it's generally tied to the number of belts that they have. So if you are a serpent belt only, you can take 2. But if you're a serpent and a flame knight, you can take 4 or whatever. And then like my kingdom has no limit. So we have knights that have 6 or 8 squires, and it's just like, cool, I think it's pretty interesting how the games develop regionally like that, culturally.
Yeah, it's its own society. So
for sure,
each society is going to be a little different.
So moving, you said pandemic, coming back out of the pandemic, you got, you asked and were accepted with the Squire belt. Has there been anything else going on through the pandemic that you've just been super excited about past year or so? Like, has there been a new skill set or an event that you did or something that was just awesome through the pandemic?
I started teaching how to weave, and I just, before I didn't have the courage to do it in person. So I thought, well, let's try it online and see how that works. And this last weekend, I taught in person for the first time. And
cool. How'd it go?
It went really well. I only had like 2 or 3 people in each class, but they all learned something new. They learned a new skill, and the people who already had the skill learned something new as well. So, I mean, if I hadn't done the online teaching over the pandemic, I don't think I would have had the confidence to do it in person.
That's awesome to hear. I love hearing people teaching the things that they love in this game. Everybody can teach somebody something, and in getting the courage to do so is a lot for some people. And that's really, really cool that you were able to use online as a stepping stone to be able to jump into that.
Yeah, part of why I reached out to you to do this interview is to help me open myself up more, because I've got to get used to talking to people again.
For sure. And I am assuming, so here, I know in Amtgard, there is a stigma around the idea of saying, I want to be a knight. So I won't put those words in your mouth, but I wanted to be a knight. It was a goal of mine. I don't care about saying it. I think it was something that I had wanted from the very early times in the, picking up this game. And so for me, while being a squire, that was one of the things that I had to learn was how to teach, how to put myself out there, how to be willing to talk to random people. Because that's a skill set that I'm not very comfortable with. If someone I don't know wants to come up and have a conversation with me, it can be really hard sometimes. And so being able to learn the skill set to be able to do that was an important part of my squire journey before I became a knight.
Yeah, I have anxiety, so it's really hard for me to talk to random people, but I am the face of my business, so I have to talk to random people. So
there you go. There's another incentive when there's money behind it.
Yeah.
One of the things that was hard for me, and maybe it was hard for you too, we'll see, it was difficult for me to view myself as the expert. Like in my head, it's like other people had taught me stuff. It was a big step for me to think like, oh, I actually have enough knowledge now that I can teach others. And that was a big step for me.
Oh yeah, that was definitely a huge thing for me to tackle. I think my cat just knocked something over.
Go ahead.
But because it took me 17 years to get comfortable enough with weaving to start teaching it. Mm-hmm. And about the same time for sewing, because I've taught some sewing classes too.
That's awesome. I know for me, it was very similar to you. I started putting out YouTube videos on how to weave belts. And then from there, once I got people who started sending me messages on Facebook, hey, I watched your video and I made this, and they would show me their awesome stuff that they had made. Mm-hmm. They were like, hey, can you teach a class for us at such and such event? I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. And they're like, well, I followed your video and made this, so you should be able to do it in person. I'm like, well, I guess. Okay, cool. And now I love teaching my belt weaving classes, and almost every event that I go to that is having classes, I'll volunteer to teach one, just because it's really cool to see the light bulb click in people's eyes. And get to, like, I love learning. And I love learning new skills and picking up new things. And it's really cool to be able to help facilitate that for other people too.
Oh yeah. My dream job is a costume shop director at a college, because then I'm doing the costuming, I'm doing the fittings, I'm doing the sewing, but I'm also teaching at the same time. I'm teaching other people how to do the sewing, how to run the costume shop. how to do the fittings, how to take the measurements, and all that fun stuff. So, I mean, that would be my ideal job, but unfortunately, you got to have a master's degree for that.
There you go. Yeah, I know. I know the teaching aspect is a difficult one, but I think it is one of the most rewarding ones in my experience. I have really, really enjoyed that. Does your kingdom have an event that is dedicated to ANS stuff?
I don't know in Amtgard. SCA, there's Clothier's Seminar, there's Kingdom ANS, there's Queen's Prize Tournament, and there's a few other ANS related symposiums. Mm-hmm. But those are generally in the world. And those travel from the kingdom.
So I know Amtgard is just getting to the point where there are events that are specifically dedicated to ANS and for classes. And I love it. I love the idea that if I could go and spend an entire weekend I want to go to Penzik specifically to take the classes. One of these days I'm going to go to Penzik and I'm going to take every class I possibly can.
I would love to go to Penzik, but it's a really long drive. I'd have to be a lot more prepared for it than I am right now.
Yeah, and I'm to the point where I still don't know a whole lot of people in the SCA. I've got, half a dozen faces that I recognize and names and stuff. So it's not, I don't have camp buddies yet like I do in every other game. So I need to build that friend group up more. And then I'm going to hit Penzik. I'm going to hit Penzik.
The best way to do that is to join the Facebook groups for the different interests that you're in. Mm. That'll get you some friends real quick.
For sure. I know I'm a part of it. I was talking about this with Lyndon a little bit. My in Amtgard, they had me just pick my name on the first day. So I just threw Godric out. But if I actually would have put time into it, I think I would have picked something else, and I would have picked something Mongolian because that's my favorite culture. And so I'm on the SCA Mongolian Personas page, which is super fun. I love it. Yeah. But then I picked to live in Kentucky where I can only wear long sleeve Mongolian stuff 2 months out of the year because the rest of the time it's just way too hot. So I got to wear the generic Viking stuff most of the year.
You know what the trick is? Linen against your skin. Because it wicks the moisture away and helps keep you cool.
Yep. We, for the most part, in the summertime, that's what I wear. Most of my fighting company tunics are all linen, and then I've just got a few of the silk ones recently. But 90% of my LARPing wardrobe is going to be linen.
Yeah, it is wonderful. I'm wearing it now, and it's the only thing I've got that does not feel so bad against my sunburn that I got Friday.
I like linen a lot, other than it dissolves. I feel like I don't ever want to wash it because it just, every time I wash it, it fades. And every time it fades, I feel like it's going to break down. Granted, I have a 10-year-old linen tunic, so I shouldn't be worried about it, but I always am.
Right. No, I understand completely. I'm afraid to wash the chemise. My mother-in-law suggested doing it in the gentle cycle, and then you definitely want to hang dry it. Mm-hmm.
Yep. All the silk I have to hand wash in cold water and then let it air dry. And that's a pain, but it's worth it.
Oh yeah. Silk is always worth it.
Yep. I joke. It's I never want anything else to touch my skin now. Now that I actually have silk stuff, I'm like, this is it. I'm high rolling it. So we talked about what you've done in the past year or so in the plague and through Amtgard. Is there anything coming up, say the next, 6 months, 12 months in either game that you play that you're just super excited for?
I'm excited for Lilies in the SCA to come back. That's in September. It's a camping event.
Okay.
And it's usually in June, but it couldn't be this year because of plague. And of course, they had to cancel it last year. But I haven't gone to a Lily's in at least 10 years, 15 years.
What is it? I've never heard of it.
It is Callancheer's War. It's the war with no enemies. Because it's not a big war. It's just a small local war, and it's about this year it's only about 5 days long, but it's usually like a week and a half long. And there's just a bunch of tournaments, arts and science classes. You've got Merchants Row, you've got archery. They've got it's on a lake, so they have a Viking longboat.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I've never been on the Viking longboat, but someday I'll get up the courage to do it.
Yeah, I am so ready for events. I don't even care what game it is. I'm just ready to start going to events.
Yeah. Yeah, I was my car broke down Friday on the way down to an event. That's why I got the sunburn, because I was waiting for a tow truck, and it wasn't going to get fixed in time. And so we went back to our original plan of getting up at 4:30 in the morning, driving 5 hours to the event, hanging out the event, leaving at about 4:30, and then driving the 5 hours back. We did that because we were so determined to go to an event again.
Yep. My local parks are meeting, which is good, better than nothing, but I'm ready to. So my kingdom in Amtgard is massive. We're the largest kingdom in the game when it comes to like numerically, but also in like just space. We cover Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, and Ohio. And so we have, it's 12 hours to get from one end of the kingdom to the other. And so I have friends that I haven't seen in a year and a half, 2 years now. I'm ready for it. I want to camp. I want to see my friends. I want to hang out. I want to fight. I want ANS tournaments in person. Online ANS tournaments are fun, but I'm ready to be back in person.
Yeah, I'm ready to hold the pretties in my hand so I can examine them closely.
Well, and that's the hard part with the online ANS stuff. So I have entered and judged both online. And as a judge, it's incredibly difficult because you can't tell. Like it's just and even if they make a video, 360 video and all of this stuff, it's really easy to mask. Like my tunics look significantly better online than they do in person. You know what I mean? And so I know. When I throw them on a mannequin and I throw a belt and I throw the accessories on, and when I'm doing my camera work and stuff, like they look pretty good. And then someone like yourself who knows what you're doing are going to look at this and go, man, what in person? You're like, man, this kind of sucks. Like why'd you do this? But online, you can't tell that. And so
that's like on the jacket that I showed you, there's a spot on the inside where when I was hand stitching the feathers on, I caught the lining. And so it's kind of puckered a little bit on the inside right there. I didn't take a picture of that for him.
Yep. That is one of the hardest parts that I have learned so far with doing the silk is when I am doing the facing on the collars, it will pucker real easy. And so I have to iron everything out and I have to make sure. And I hate pens. I hate them with a passion, but that's like the only thing I'll use pens on is the facing.
Oh yeah. Silk is squiggly and loves to move on you. So you've got to pin the heck out of it.
Yep. But it's worth it. Again, I love it. Now, my next project is I want to make hoods with silk lining. I feel like that would be really cool because I have a bunch of leftover silk and I'm not throwing any of it away. I will find stuff for it, and
that is a fantastic idea.
I think it'd be great, do a linen. And if you wanted it to be you could do linen and then a batting and then silk or linen and silk and be good,
Yeah.
Either way. Mm-hmm. I think that would be pretty fun. And then I'm working on that. And then I want to work on, I got a couple of blocks. I want to try my hand at the block printing.
Yeah.
That stuff is gorgeous.
It is gorgeous. Unfortunately, I don't have anywhere where I can hang it up to dry it. So that kind of stuff, if I ever get an order for it, I outsource it. Because I've got a connection in Florida who does a fantastic job. She's absolutely gorgeous work. I can't remember the name of her business.
So I have one printed Mongolian deal from Harpy and Hag. And so I bought that, and it was gorgeous. I absolutely love it. And then it's got period dual lions from the Yuan dynasty in Mongolia, which is my favorite era. I love the Kublai Khan era of Mongolian history, and this is from that era. And then they have videos up on YouTube about how they make it all. And so I've watched 8 hours, just rabbit holed real hard into how to do this. And I'm going to do it on some of the skull high or whatever you call them hoods on the squares in the front. So I'm going to do solid, like the over the head part's going to be solid. And then the squares on the front and the back are going to be printed with that repeating pattern on it is my goal. That
would look lovely, I think.
I hope so. I can do the hood just fine, but I can't do the lining. So I got to figure that out before I jump into it.
Well, in period, they would not have been lined.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. One of my friends did some research on one of the finds, and they weren't lines. The facing edge was roll hemmed, and then there was actually a ridge going here that was sewn, so that it would stay up instead of falling down on your face. And then they had little ties here so you could tie it back.
I feel like that wouldn't be very warm. It's like if it's just linen.
Well, if it's wool, though, because it was wool.
That's true. Man, but then you have wool on your skin. No thanks. I break out in any time I touch solid wool. So I have a couple of wool things, but I always have to make sure that they are I have linen underneath them.
Yeah, that's understandable.
I got, what would that have been? 2 years ago, I got my first wool hood, and I had always wanted one. And it's not just like the normal hood that comes here. It's more like a poncho. Like it comes all like the end of the hood like comes down to my belly. And I love it. It's just huge and it's warm. I don't know how period it is, but I love it.
Oh yeah, that sounds nice.
But it's Amtgard, so we don't care if it's period.
Exactly.
So as we are coming towards the end of our interview here, I always throw this open-ended question at the end of my interviews. Is there any topic that is like near and dear to your heart that we didn't talk about, or maybe it's a current event going on in your kingdom that you want to talk about? Is there just something else that we missed that you want to spend some time here before we close talking about?
I am looking forward to this year will be my first time going to Curse of the Great Pumpkin in Rivermore. So I am looking forward to that.
I have heard stories.
Yeah, I taught at the virtual one last year. I think that was my first time teaching for Amtgard. And I don't know if I'm going to teach this year or not because I'm going to be vending. But I'm really looking forward to it.
That's what we can talk about, actually. I want to, if you don't mind, I would love to pick your mind on the vending aspect of our games.
Okay.
Because I have vended for when I was coming up through like earning my awards. I love ANS tournaments. I'm a hyper competitive person. And so I won my masterhood mainly from winning tournaments. And so I would vend to pay for my tournaments. And so each tournament was a few $100s and, doing 4 a year and whatnot. So I enjoyed vending for the money. I hated spending an entire event weekend in a tent. So how do you have fun at events when you're vending? Because that was something I was never able to figure out.
Well, this last weekend I did both vending and teaching. And I was concerned leaving my table alone while I went to teach, but there was another vendor there, and we know each other, and so I felt okay enough to leave it for a bit. But it is hard because what if you miss a sale? It could have been a big sale, and it's just you've got to find a way to separate the two so that you aren't thinking about work while you're playing and you're not thinking about playing while you're working. And that's the biggest struggle for me is, well, mostly separating the not thinking about work while I'm playing. That's my biggest struggle right now.
For sure. The hard part for me is when I go, like, for instance, at Keep, we'll have 800 to 1,000 people there, and it's one of, if not the largest Amtgard event. And I'll set up and, I will make money while I am there. But it is hard for me to justify spending, the $50 for the event and then spending 4 or 5 days in my tent. And it may just be because of the thing that I sell, right? Like my belts are not the highest dollar amount, and then not everybody wants them. So it's not like the sword vendors who walk out with thousands and thousands of dollars, right? Each time. That's just not me, because not everybody needs what I'm selling. And I understand that. But it is hard for me to justify sitting at events sometimes, especially our local kingdom events, which are, 150 or 200 people. But man, when you have that one big event and you walk home with a full pocket, it's like, okay.
That was worth it. That was worth it. But you've also got to do the small events because, you might get a sale, or you might, you're introducing yourself to a new possible client base. And like with my stuff, most of what I do is custom made. So I have troubles building up stock.
Same.
But I've got to build up stock so I can go vend at events and get my name out there.
Absolutely. That's what I am working on right now. Is I have not worked on my stock for 2 years just because I was done vending for a while. And now I'm like, okay, I might do it again. And I only have 8 belts in my stock right now. And I want 3. You know what I mean? So like, it's like time to start back up again.
Yeah. Thankfully I've got a big loom that holds up to 8 yards. And so I can do like 2 or 3 belts on that at one time.
Awesome.
So that's handy.
That's really cool. Each one of my belts takes roughly 3 hours, 2.5 to 3 hours. And
that's
so
nice.
I enjoy making them. And generally I'm watching like Netflix or something as I'm doing them. But the problem is because after I got my masterhood, I made a few custom orders for friends and for knights and stuff, but I quit weaving for a while because I was like, all right, I'm going to take a break. And I lost all of my calluses. And so now when I'm getting back into it, I can only weave for like an hour at a time, and then my hands are like raw. And so I need to get my calluses back so I can just crank them out.
Oh yeah. When I sew, every now and then I'll prick myself and I'll look at it and there's no blood. I don't know if I have calluses or thick skin, but yeah, it's nice to not have to stop and put a Band-Aid on.
Yep, for sure. One of the things that I have thought about for me is trying to do other things other than just my belts. And then maybe that would be, so I have had the idea, again, I'm not very good at sewing, but I would love going and like buying just everything I can off of like the SCA used garb sites and whatever, and then being like a resale type store. Cause I feel like that could have a market, right? If I'm going to buy this for $25 and sell it for $50. And then people know it's a used thing. And if they want to swap their old garb for store, like I feel like a restore type of environment, especially for Amtgard, where people are generally more money conscious than they are in some of the other games. I feel like that could work, but I think it could, you got to spend all the money on the inventory again. And it's like, that's part of why my inventory is so low, because you got to have money to build it. Especially if you're making garb out of like linen and stuff. I don't think people realize sometimes, like, I think it is better now, but when I first started in Amtgard, if someone charged $75 for a linen tunic, like they would get scoffed at. And that was like a full custom, and I'm like, guys, you don't realize that's $30, $40 in linen right there, depending on what you're looking at. And that's let alone if they are embroidering it. That's let alone if they're doing multiple colors. You go to Linen Garb's website and a single colored long sleeve tunic is going to be $80. That's not even anything. That's not trim. That's not anything.
Yeah, that's very basic. Like my custom linen tunics are for adults. They start at I think $150 because I've got to do the patterning. I've got to get the linen, which is like $10 to $20 a yard, depending on what you're getting.
Yep.
And then, of course, you got to pay for the shipping because I can't get it locally.
For sure. I think what people need to realize is you're ordering things from LARP vendors and, medieval vendors. You are my ratio is my material cost plus, depending on if I like it, $15 an hour of my time. And if I don't like it, 20 to 25. Like if you give a project I just don't want to do, I'm going to throw a high number out there. But so when people walk up to vendors and they see, wow, that's a $200 tunic. Well, yeah, there's probably 4 or 5 hours worth of time in that at $20 an hour, plus materials, plus the tent that they're vending out of, plus their credit card machine fees, plus it adds up very, very quickly. And a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, I didn't realize it before I started making stuff because I would see, chemises for like $100. I was like, is that crazy? They're crazy. No, they're not. They're underselling themselves at $100. Yep.
And I hate I can go on to, insert cheap Indian knockoff LARP website and buy it for cheaper. And my response always to that is, if you can find this cheaper, please go buy it cheaper. And then I will be here in 6 months when you need another one.
Yep.
I mean, some of my under tunics, right? This is like a $30 under tunic or something. And I've had it for a couple years. It's fine, but I've washed it, a dozen times and it's already short. Yeah. Right. Now the linen stuff that I get doesn't do that because the vendors take the time and they pre-wash one or two times. And so you get what you pay for. And if you want to buy a $30 linen tunic off or a $30 cotton tunic off Amazon, go buy a $30 cotton tunic off Amazon. And when you're dying in the, summer heat, go buy a $100 linen tunic from a vendor and you'll love it.
And it'll last you forever.
And that's not even with the custom stuff. Yes. Yeah.
If you take care of it.
Because then you get into the applique and that's a whole nother beast and a whole nother, vendors spend or crafters spend hours on applique and then are charging $100. I'm like, oh, don't do that to yourself.
Don't do it. Yeah. It's like, I'm going to be doing an applique tunic and I told them, $300. I take payment plans.
That's nice.
Because, everyone deserves to have nice garb. And I know I'm expensive. If it's over $100, you can set up a payment plan.
That's awesome. I love that. That's a really, really good idea. And I think that's really neat for people who, like you said, are, hey, this is my first event. I just came through and I noticed everyone else is in this awesome garb and I really want some and I want to fit in, but I didn't know what to bring. So I got $50. Can I start a payment plan on that?
Yeah.
I like that. That's pretty neat.
Because, like I said, everyone deserves to have the nice garb.
Yep. And I think, I don't know about you, but there is something about putting on the nice fancy garb that just does it for me. I spend more money every year on my LARP gear than I do my mundane clothes. I don't really care. I have enough and I like what I wear in my real life. But man, when I put on my court garb or when I put on that new tunic I made, there's something about that is just real cool. And I want every new player to be able to experience that.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I finished this bodice about 2 weeks ago, and it is so comfortable. I want to make some to wear in my mundane life, because then I don't need to wear certain pieces of clothing then, because this just does it all.
Yep. I have felt very similar feelings with, man, why can't I just wear my garb in public? Like, this is so much more comfortable than anything else that I normally have. Oh, yeah.
Like coming back from the event, we didn't bother changing back into our mundane clothes. We stayed in this and we drove, and we stopped at Sonic for supper, and a kid came, the kid who brought our food out came back out a second time because he forgot to bring out the sauce. It's like, dude, you came out to stare at my boobs. I know you did.
Whenever I have one of these interviews, I just put my garb on when I get home from work, and then I, eat dinner and do my evening chores in my garb. And I'm just like, there's something about it. I like my garb.
Oh, yeah, it's so nice.
So we've talked about it a little bit here, but plug your websites, plug your businesses here. Where can people find you if they want to go and take a look at some of your work?
So I have my own website that was set up by a friend of mine, and that website would not have happened without her. I am so grateful. Anna Jordan Creative. I'm going to plug her because she does great work. And it's ravenswingclothing.com. That's where I do my main sales through. I do have an Etsy page, but I don't care for selling on Etsy, so I don't have a lot on there. But yeah, if you go to Ravens Wing Clothing, I've also got a Facebook page. I don't update it as much as I should because I'm horrible at social media. But on the website, if I've been commissioned to make it, or if I've made it for myself and I've gotten pictures of it, it's up on the website right now. If you look at like the hoopalons, it's period paintings, because I haven't gotten any commissions for hoopalons yet. But when I do, I will get pictures of them and put them up. Like right now, I'm working on a padded gambeson. As soon as it's done, I'm going to get pictures of it, and I'm going to list padded gambesons on the website because those are great for fighters in both games.
Absolutely.
I will not do gambesons for cut and thrust in the SCA, though, because you have to do a punch test, and there's just so much that can go wrong. I don't feel comfortable doing that. So,
yeah, very fair.
So, yeah, but like for heavy fighting, it goes on underneath your armor or over your armor. Mostly it's for to keep you from getting armor bites. So I don't mind doing a padded gambeson for heavy fighting. I thought about getting into leatherworking, but I don't have the patience for it for some reason. I have the patience for sewing and weaving and bobbin lace, but not for leatherworking.
Leatherworking's a different animal.
It is. It really is. So I mean, I do a little bit still, but not a whole lot. I'm trying to get my husband is interested in it. I'm trying to get him to do it so we can sell other stuff. We'll see how that pans out. But I also do custom patterns. So if someone wants to sew their own thing, but they can't find a pattern for it, if you live in the US, the price includes printing for it. So that's so I do custom patterns that include instructions if I know how to make them. Otherwise, it's just a pattern. If I'm not sure how to make the garment, there's not going to be instructions. You'll have to figure it out. But I usually try to include instructions because, like, some people, they're just so new to sewing, they need the instructions. Trying to think what else I've got. I've got my weaving listed up there, and there's just a lot of random stuff. The ritual coat that I showed you, because that coat is for my personal ritual use. I'm going to make another one that's for play because she won't let me wear that coat unless it's a ritual, but I can show it off all I want. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff. There's corsets, there's wrist pants, there's a wide variety. If you don't see what you want, send me a message. I'll happily work on a custom commission for you.
That's awesome. So yeah, everybody, if you're watching this and you have any interest in any of those products, go check out Raven Wing Clothing. I will have links to all of those things in the show notes here. So thank you very much for being on. Thank you, viewers, for making it to the end. We really appreciate you if you've made it this far. If you like this content and want to see more of it, please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. It really does help out the channel. And if you can think of anybody that you want to see on here or you want to be on here yourself, send me a message. We'd love to have you on. Really appreciate you for being on with me here this evening. And viewers, we'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me.